I think, first of all, it's important to introduce myself in my capacity within the town council. I think that's quite an important thing. So, yeah, I'm Matt Hardy. I'm the Visitor Services Manager here at Western Museum, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about my journey as what you would probably call a bisexual man. The terms and things have changed so much over the years, especially within my generation. And being bi has been quite a complicated thing over the years, with relationships, friendships, interactions with other people within the LGBT community, as well as those who aren't in that community as well. So to start at the beginning of it all, it's quite a cliched thing to say, but it's one of those things that you always know. You know who you like, you know who you don't like. I think it's more you know who you don't like. And for me, it was never as clear as man or woman. It was more of the type of person. And once I'd figured that out, at a relatively early-ish age, I'd say maybe 12, 13, something like that, you realise that the things that put you off people aren't necessarily tied to the gender of that person, because you can find really attractive qualities in a man or a woman. And I say you because that seems like quite a generalised term. Like me, if I like a person, I like a person. Their gender is not relevant to me. I've had relationships with men and women. My longer term relationships do tend to be with women. And I don't know if that's because being bi is being on a spectrum. I think anything with LGBT, there is an element of spectrum to it. And I think that's what people struggle with, especially if they're outside of that community. Because if you're straight, you're straight. And there's some of that in LGBT as well. Some gay men that I've known, been friends with, they struggle to deal with anything outside of gay is gay. And it's the same with straight is straight, or being a lesbian is being a lesbian. Or if you're trans or anything like that, it starts to get a little bit more complex. Yeah, so my interactions with people within LGBT have been like the same negative reactions I've had with people who would fall under that LGBT are the same as the negative reactions that I've had from the straight community. Normally with the outlook that people that are bisexual are greedy, which I think in some cases is probably true, and I can't, it's just, it's one of those things. But there's a difference between being greedy, I suppose, and not looking for gender when looking for a relationship. Or even, at a baser level, a lot of this isn't to do with, who am I going to settle down with? It's about the people that you want to do slightly more grown-up activities with, I suppose. But then I don't think sex and orientation are the same thing. I think for me anyway, sex is sex, but where you put yourself on that orientation spectrum, that's where you're talking about relationships and personalities and partnerships. So that's why I put myself in that bisexual category.
So what you're saying is quite a gap between sex and love.
There is a massive gap between sex and love.
Yeah.
There's a massive difference between who you would be.
And that's something you can keep separate for you in your own head. Am I right there or not?
I think it's not a case of keeping it separate. It's just acknowledging that it's two different things. The amount of times that I've had conversations with people, or I've heard stories of people of, oh, a man gets with a man but they're not gay, or a woman gets with a woman but they're not gay, and it's true. Sex is different to love and partnerships, and that's something that it took me a little while to figure out. It did take a long time for me to figure that out, and I had to find out in some fairly horrible ways, because you get, being, for me anyway, as someone who identifies as being bisexual, when you're in a relationship with somebody, it's hard to, it doesn't stop. If you're in a relationship with a woman, it doesn't mean that for the duration of that relationship you are straight. Or if you're in a relationship with a man, that doesn't mean that for the duration of that relationship that you are gay. And this is why I think there is a massive difference between sex and partnership. Because the attractions are always going to be there, and you will see that from every element, straight, gay, and everything in between. The attraction doesn't stop. It is who you are. It's how you were built to be. And there's no amount of sort of conditioning or training yourself to think differently that will change that. Being bi and having relationships has been interesting, to say the least. And as I said, I've made some mistakes along the road, but the same way that anybody else would. But unfortunately, one of those mistakes led to the infamous event in anybody's life who is on the LGBTQ plus spectrum, is that moment when you have to come out. And when you come out, it will only ever be one of two ways: because you want to or because you have to. Unfortunately for me, it's because I had to. I was still figuring some stuff out. Who I wanted to be with this was the moment when I figured out the difference between sex and love, I suppose. And I was still figuring that out. And broke up with somebody because I'd made some bad life choices, let's say. And then that's when I had to tell my parents, I had to explain to my parents about what being bi was. And I still don't think they understand. But I know that they love me, and I am who I am, and they're on board, and that's okay. Trying to explain to somebody of an older generation, like my parents, what being bi is, was really complicated and really awkward. And I think it's more awkward trying to explain to somebody that you are capable of having those sorts of emotions for men or women, when it should be more cut and dry than that. It should either be, I think if I came out as gay, they would have been fine, because it's like, oh, okay, doesn't like women, likes men. But that isn't who I am, and I'm not apologetic about it. It's not something that I hide. I think I'm quite lucky, because a lot of people assume that I'm gay just because of how I am. I'm relatively flamboyant. I'm very camp, let's be honest, very camp. Just sort of energetic and try and be as friendly as I can, and those are traits that are normally associated with gay men. But I'm not. And a lot of the time I like to confuse people and let them assume that I'm gay, and then they get surprised when I will talk about my deliberately using the word partner, and they find out it's a woman. It's like, yes, I'm in a committed relationship to a woman, and I'm planning to marry said woman. But even if I'm marrying a woman, doesn't mean I'm not bi. It's who I am. And luckily she's really understanding and gets it. Which comes back to, there is a difference between sex and love. It's about the person. I don't want to marry this person because they are a woman. It's because of the person that they are. And for me, that's so important. So important. Okay, yeah.
If you're happy.
Yeah, of course, that's not a problem.
You know, as a product almost of being bi.
Yeah, I think the sort of the coming out journey that I think everybody has, be straight or gay or whatever. When you're figuring out what you are and who you are, you tend to take gambles and start to do things to try and express externally how you're feeling internally. And one of the things that I did to try and express that side of me was drag. And it started off in the way that you would kind of expect it to start. You'd maybe try out some of the makeup, try out some of the clothes, and it was never about, and it still isn't, it's not about being a woman. It's not about wanting to be a woman. It's about embracing the femininity that is inside you and expressing that through a character. It's no different to a panto dame. It's no different to when a woman plays the principal boy in a panto. It's exactly the same thing. A very highly elevated, over-exaggerated character and personality. And for me, I didn't come to terms with being bi through drag. Drag was a way that I expressed that side of me. And I did do it for quite a while. Nothing I would term as successful, but it was a fun journey. And after I'd moved down to Weston, I mean, the scenes in Weston compared to Birmingham, where I'm from, they're two very different things. Birmingham has a slightly more... There's a bigger population, there's a more multicultural element to it as well, which Weston is moving towards but isn't quite there yet. So what I did in the Midlands is different to what I've done here. My drag performances since I've been in Weston have been very few and far between, but it's always part of who I am, and it's just a way that I like to perform that character and express that side of my sexuality, my personality. And she changes. The character changes, and there are different characters for different times, for different reasons. So it's not... I've never viewed drag as a way of expressing yourself wanting to be female. It's about expressing femininity as opposed to having the aspiration of being a woman. But that's my own personal take. People do drag for all sorts of different reasons. The same way that you would choose to drive a certain car. It's about the way that that thing makes you feel. And what you want from... What do you want from the car? What do you need? And for me, that's what drag is. But you can change the car out a lot more regularly, because if you're feeling something like a little bit more sporty, a bit more risque, you can. If you want to go out and be a Honda Civic for a while, you can. There's something for everybody. And I would highly recommend, especially if anybody identifies as straight male, have a go. It's fun. And the second you even put a wig on, you don't have to dress up as a woman. Put a wig on, do a bit of really rubbish makeup, you will change. But it's just exploring that side of your personality. And go and have a go. It's fun.